The other day, I was playing with one of my lower rated friends, and he made a comment that really stuck out to me. He asked me, how come I don't see the same results as you do, even though you've coached me and I've copied exactly what you tell me to do? This was a really awesome question for him to ask because it got me thinking. I didn't actually know the answer right away off the top of my head. It took me a while, probably 10 to 15 minutes of analyzing his play and watching to determine exactly why he wasn't seeing the proper results. You see, even though he had the general idea of when he wanted to be doing certain things, and this could be anything, literally anything at all, he didn't have the exact timings down. Watching his play back, I could see that his trades weren't as effective because he was starting too early or too late. His roams, his shot calling, all of it was off by just a few seconds. Today, we're going to be covering how you can avoid this exact mistake and a lot of common examples. This is a video that's going to apply to a lot of our other videos. You might have the general concepts down, but you might be doing it a little bit wrong or have the timing a bit off. You're going to be able to get the most value from this video by watching a bunch of our other videos in tandem with it, or by checking out our website, GameLeap.com. Over at our website, we've got hundreds of guides, all done by challenger players, sorted into a quick and easy to use courses system. We've got courses both on the 5 fundamental roles as well as champion specific courses. So if that is something that interests you, then make sure to check it out using the link in the description below. Now, why is timing so important? And this can apply to League, but it can also apply to tons of other things in your daily life as well. As I'm sure a lot of you guys know, being in the right place in the right time can result in the most wonderful things happening. And if you have a story on that, I'd love to hear them down in the comments section below. This can also go very heavily the other way, just being in the wrong place in the wrong time, and it feels like there's nothing that you could have done. With understanding this, we've come to our goal. How can we be in the right place at the right time more often and be in the wrong place at the wrong time less often? As far as real life, well, can't help you out on that one. I'm not challenger at real life, but with League of Legends, I definitely can help you out. So buckle up and let's get started. The first thing that we need to understand is what is called windows of opportunity. In League of Legends, windows of opportunity are very, very important. Very commonly, a short window of time where a specific opportunity will present itself will occur. Now, this opportunity could be trading with the enemy champion without them having a chance to trade back with you. This results in you having a huge health lead because you got to trade and they didn't. One of the most common time windows for this specific opportunity is any time the enemy champion goes to CS. Usually when somebody's last hitting, they have to make a choice. Am I going to last hit the minion with either a spell or an auto, or am I going to trade with the enemy champion with a spell or an auto? Unless you're able to get both the trade and the minion with one single ability, it's usually just better to go for the minion. The minion is guaranteed gold, and that's what most people are going to go after. Now, you're probably wondering why I'm going over such a simple topic so in depth, and don't worry, I'm doing this for a reason. There's a purpose. By the end, it'll all make sense. I'm using this example to show why it is my friend wasn't seeing the same results as I was. Now, continuing with the example, when we capitalize on this window of opportunity properly, when we perform the trade properly, we don't take damage and the enemy does. It's a huge net positive for us. But what happens when we capitalize on this window of opportunity wrong? And this is the really important part. This is why he wasn't able to see as much success. In this example, since he was failing the timing on this play over and over again, every time that he would trade, the enemy would be able to trade back with him for free without being punished at all. Instead of dominating the lane, leaving the lane phase up 20 CS and a few kills, he just leaves lane even, and he isn't able to capitalize on the many mistakes that the enemy laner makes. This is because even though, yes, the enemy laner is making a lot of mistakes, so is my friend, and my friend's mistakes are offsetting the enemy laner's mistakes, meaning it's just a wash. They end up going even. So it comes down to this. How are we going to stop ourselves from messing up this timing? And this can apply to anything, remember. Well, like I said, I thought about it a lot and I've come up with 3 things that you need to focus on in order to make sure that this is something that you are capitalizing on properly. First and most important, you want to be thinking ahead. You need to have a plan of action. When are you going to go for trades? How are you going to play the macro game? Your plan can be very generalized or it can be very specific, but no matter how specific or general it is, it needs to have one very important thing, and that's what we're going to call a trigger. Your trigger is going to be what sets the plan in motion. Let's go back to our trading on CS example that we've been using throughout the entire video. The plan here is very simple. We want to trade with the enemy champion. This plan is okay, but it's missing a trigger. This is what will make it a good plan that will always result in a positive for us. So we want to make sure our trigger is very strict. The stricter the trigger, the better. So for trading on CS, we actually have two separate conditions that need to be met for our trigger. The first is one of your minions needs to get low enough for the enemy champion to go for that CS. The second is you need to be able to cast your abilities. This means they're off cooldown and you have the mana or energy to do so. Like I mentioned earlier, this is a very strict trigger, which is what makes it so good. The more conditions that your trigger has, the more likely your play is going to put you ahead. This is of course assuming that all of your triggers are sound. Essentially, these are the safeguards to ensure that the play doesn't go wrong. Okay, so we've got a plan, we've got some triggers to set this plan in motion. What is left? Well, if we just think for a second, our plan ensures that we're looking for windows of opportunity. Our trigger makes sure that we don't go too early on these windows of opportunity. So all that's left is to make sure that we don't go too late. For this, we need the discipline to not overcommit. I'd say that this was about 60 to 70% of the issue when watching my friend play. A lot of the time you might know the right play and you might even have a trigger assigned for when you should be going for that play, but you might doubt yourself or the play just might go wrong for some reason and then you overcommit to it. If you miss the window of opportunity and it's no longer the right play to be making, that is okay. Just let it go. That is the most important thing. Don't chase after a mistake has been made. Don't overcommit to a Baron or Dragon call or trying to take a tower. It's all right. It's not going anywhere. You can always make a play later. In these cases where something does go wrong, go back to rule number 1, assign a new plan of action, and then you can look for new plays with that. At this point, you should have a full understanding of windows of opportunity and why timing is so important with League. So now let me just help you out with a few different examples of when timing is going to be very important. We already talked about trading on CS, so let's talk about Baron plays. The biggest no-no for Baron plays is just randomly going to the Baron and starting it. You never want to do that. If we just randomly go to Baron, it could be stolen, you could lose a 50-50 smite, you could get wiped at Baron, any number of things could happen. So we're going to refer to rules number 1 and 2. We're going to establish a plan and triggers. A typical plan for Baron and using Baron would be trying to do Baron around 25 to 30 minutes once your team does have the damage to do it, and then using the Baron to siege down towers and try to get an inhib. So what are our triggers for this game? Remember, triggers are a safeguard to keep bad things from happening. You don't want bad things happening. The first trigger or safeguard is going to be ensuring that the enemy jungler is not a threat. This is either because he is dead or your jungler can outsmite their jungler. The second trigger would be something occurring that ensures that you can't be wiped at the Baron. This is usually 2 or 3 kills on priority targets on the enemy team, but it could be just making those targets base. When you eliminate the threat of the enemy jungler and you eliminate the threat of the other priority targets on the enemy team, then suddenly you have a very free Baron. Of course, a modern tragedy could happen and your Nunu jungle could miss smite consume. I've seen it happen, but you want to be making sure that those chances are as low as possible. Honestly, if your Nunu does miss smite consume, things aren't looking great on that one. Just gonna throw that out there. Okay, and on to rule number 3, making sure we don't overcommit. What happens when you eliminate those priority targets and the jungler and you start the Baron, but somebody on the enemy team stalls you out long enough that they're able to start respawning? If you don't have time to finish it and people are going to start respawning, then you need to cut your losses and let it go. It's important not to overcommit in these cases because if you do, you won't have time to go back to the base, shop, get your health and mana, and the enemy team is just going to get Baron instead of you. For these next few examples, I'm going to allow you guys to follow these rules on your own, establish a plan, establish some triggers, make sure you don't overcommit, because this is stuff you guys are going to be needing to do on your own in a game. I'm not going to be able to help you through it. So what are some other things where timing is very, very important? We've got trading on CS, we've got Baron plays, so of course the next logical thing would be Dragon plays and Rift Herald plays. These are very important because if you try to force them at the wrong time and they go poorly, then suddenly it's a huge swing in advantage from you to the enemy team. One thing that has really specific timings that most people don't think of is your first few bases timings. Specifically, you need to have a certain amount of gold by a certain time so that you can base and start exerting pressure. Usually this is going to revolve around the enemy jungler and where they're going to be in their clear. It can also be very important with your jungler if you are duo with them too. Speaking of junglers, first gank timing is going to be pretty important as well. You're going to want to get a gank out as soon as possible, and the difference of even 5 seconds can be a huge deal. For laners, timing is very important when initiating a freeze or a slow push. If you realize that you need to start a freeze a few seconds too late, it might be too late to actually start a freeze. Similarly, if you realize too late that you need to start a slow push and crash that into the enemy tower, you might not be able to crash it into the tower properly. It might freeze right outside their tower and be really bad for you. These are the main biggest things that timing is a huge deal on. If you want to watch a player that has timing down to a T, almost perfected, then you should watch Dopa. Dopa plays almost like a robot. He does very specific things at very specific times, and sometimes you can watch 2 of his separate games and they'll look almost identical. This concept is so important to him that he'll drop his wards at the same time in a lot of his games. He's constantly looking for windows of opportunity, and if he misses them, then he misses them, but he's able to capitalize on the vast majority of the windows that he does find. Now, I just want to quickly recap and have one final word. We want to look for windows of opportunity so that we can optimally punish the enemy champion as much as possible without losing anything for ourselves. In order to do this, we need to establish our plan of action, put some triggers in place so that we can follow up on this plan, and make sure that we don't overcommit. I do want to say that League of Legends is a game where the seconds do matter, and the difference in just a few seconds on doing a certain play can mean life or death. It can even determine win or loss, so you want to get your timings down as best as possible. And you know what? This is even something that you can practice in the real world. If there's a cute girl or boy in your class, maybe it's the perfect time to go ask them on a date. Or maybe don't. Actually, you should probably not take relationship advice from me, ever. You know what? Forget I said anything. Instead, you should go check out our website, GameLeap.com. It is the perfect time to check out our website. We're constantly adding new guides and updating old ones. We've got hundreds of guides, all done by challenger players like myself, sorted into a quick and easy to use courses system. We've got courses both on the 5 fundamental roles, as well as champion specific courses. So if that is something that interests you, then make sure to check us out using the link in the description below. As always, I'm Panther. I hope you learned something valuable, and I will see you in the next one.